Been lucky enough in this very varied career to interview many British Prime Ministers, and they all have the same sort of facet really. You know, everybody talks about individual parties and stuff like that, but truly they all have the same drive. And the problem about being a British Prime Minister is that really there's always somebody literally behind you within seconds wanting to take your job. I don't know if you've ever seen the BBC TV comedy, which was a favourite of the late and brilliant Right Honourable Margaret Thatcher, called Yes Prime Minister and Yes Minister. It really depicts that world very well. And I know other people have seen things like, you know, the Kevin Spacey drama and stuff like that, and the Ian Richardson version, over here. Fascinating how politics work. But when you get to the other side of it, you realise actually there's a very caring attitude towards it. And Boris Johnson recently has been releasing his memoir, you know, extracts from his memoir called Unleashed. And as I've told you before, he had a very special relationship with Her Majesty the Queen because, you know, obviously he'd been mayor, so he'd built a relationship with her before because of becoming British Prime Minister. So they had a little bit more than the normal thing that happened. And it's fascinating, as I say, to read the insight and the relationship between the Queen and Boris, because clearly it was one of kind of fun affection, a little bit like somebody who's a lot older and basically saying, look, do it like this, you know, don't bother, just listen to me, you know, I've been there, I know what we're doing, just move on and let's go down this direction. And you could see that Boris had a lot of time for Her Majesty the Queen. He was very, very kind and very respectful to her, regardless of what people are saying about, you know, the Partygate and all that sort of stuff. All that's covered in the book. But what I've discovered, which is not in the book, is simply this, and it's a fascinating insight into exactly the final few, shall we say, days, weeks of our wonderful monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. 70 years on the throne, and of course up in Balmoral for our annual summer break. One suspects, you know, that obviously, given the fact, the information that we knew, that Her Majesty would have known exactly just how ill and possibly how long she had. But what emerged about this particular story, which I find fascinating, was, you know, she openly talked about the future and about what would happen when she wasn't there. You know, she was talking a lot about that in the final few weeks. So one suspects she knew more than she let on, you know, obviously to the greater public. But what was also fascinating was the fact that she clearly, as I said, got on with Boris. Now, Boris is regaled with many stories, but I was told that bottom line was she always assumed that when she did sadly pass and leave us, her sort of eulogy, if you like, the discussion leading from the government of the time outside 10 Downing Street, would be addressed by none other than Boris Johnson. And apparently she quite liked this idea because she knew he would probably make it fun, not sour and dour. She didn't want that, apparently. She wanted it to be a celebration, you know, sort of people remembering her in the positive rather than in the darker, sombre things that we did get. And of course, as you can imagine, her very final outing was meeting the then British Prime Minister for 44 days, the Right Honourable Liz Truss. And I told you in a previous video, Liz discussed with me exactly what it was like meeting for the very final time and how difficult it was for the monarch just to get through that. Of course, Liz Truss ended up addressing the nation while Boris sat from the sidelines. But according to a source, apparently deep down, and as ever we have to say this, but allegedly our late and wonderful monarch had hoped that maybe this particular speech would have come from Boris for the simple reason she just knew he'd either make a bit of fun, get it wrong, and simply cheer the nation up, because she knew that her passing would signify the end of a certain era, but more importantly, she wanted people to be happy. And as apparently a source told me, the big thing that she really was looking for was, sadly as she went, she didn't want people to be remorseful, but to look to the future. But like everything in life, you simply can't plan it. And Boris, and for the Queen, sadly this wasn't meant to be. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.